Have you ever felt like your mind fails you exactly when you need it the most? As if, in the very moment your spirit asks for silence and direction, your mind responds with noise and exhaustion? That feeling is not a failure. It's a sign, a whisper from your soul saying, you're operating below who you truly are. What people call mental weakness is an ancient lie, a veil cast over consciousness, fueled by systems that fear an awakened mind aligned with its divine origin. You did not come into this world just to survive among distractions. You came to manifest the strength of the spirit in the form of attention, intention, and clarity. Your mind is not a machine. It is a mirror of your inner field. And when that field is clear, aligned, and surrendered, the mind becomes limitless. In this video, we will access the living intelligence that lives in your silence and restore the alliance between mind and soul. A portal to recover what you've always known. Your mind was never weak. It was just disconnected from the source. Take a deep breath. Feel what awakens inside. You are not here by accident. You're ready to remember. You are not tired because your mind is weak. You are tired because you are disconnected from the spark that sustains you. True exhaustion doesn't come from too much effort, but from a lack of alignment between what you do and who you are. What people call mental weakness is, in fact, just the mind trying to function outside of presence. A mind disconnected from the soul becomes noisy, fragmented, scattered. But that is not its nature. Your mind was made to reflect the luminous silence of your being. Like the calm surface of a lake reflects the sky, what they call cognitive fatigue is often the result of a mind disconnected from its vibrational source. Like a crystal covered in dust, it loses its shine, but not its essence. And the shine can be restored. True mental strength doesn't come from effort, but from attunement. When you quiet the excess of stimuli and return to your center, you begin to feel a different kind of energy. You were not made to live in conflict with your own mind. You were made to guide it as a sacred instrument, tuned to the vibration of your higher self. And that doesn't require more strength. It requires a return. Be silent now. Notice how many thoughts were never yours, but inherited. How many times have you mistaken tiredness for disconnection? Every unbalanced mind is a system with subtle leaks. You don't lose energy only when you act, but mainly when you resist. When you stay attached to unresolved thoughts, to undigested feelings, to memories that keep consuming light in the darkness of unconsciousness. The mind, like everything in the universe, follows energetic laws. If there is friction, there is loss. If there is noise, there is dissipation. But when there is alignment between mind, emotion, and spirit, then there is expansion. This is what we can call the thermodynamics of consciousness. That's why, before trying to speed up the mind, you must purify it. Not with denial, but with presence. The energy that today feeds distractions, comparisons, and inner conflicts can be redirected to higher states of clarity. But this requires going through what many avoid, the shadow zones of the psyche. Shadow psychology is not about fear. It's about seeing the patterns that operate behind automatic behavior, seeing the inherited beliefs that say, you can't, you are limited, you will fail. These voices are not you. They are echoes. They are programs. And every program can be uninstalled. By recognizing these forces and bringing them into the light, you take back control of your mental field. The mind does not need to be feared, nor forced into submission. It needs to be walked through with awareness, because only awareness can turn shadow into direction. Your mental energy is not lost. It is waiting for you to close the leaks and guide it back to the center. The human mind did not come into the world limited. It was trained to operate in reduced mode. Since childhood, your neural pathways have been shaped by repetition, reinforcement, punishment, and the expectations of others. But what few people say is that all this architecture can be rebuilt. Cognitive awakening is not about doing more, forcing more, or collecting techniques. It's about removing the invisible brakes. It's allowing the mind to return to its natural state of expansion and clarity. This process is a silent re-engineering. It begins when you say enough to autopilot and take control of your system's vibration. Science calls this neuroplasticity, but the ancients already knew. The mind is like water, it takes the shape of the container you offer it. And if the container is the image of your lower self, your thoughts will be small, reactive, scattered. But if you offer the mind the vision of your higher self, it reorganizes itself toward the sky. Everything starts with small conscious decisions. What you repeat, you strengthen. What you allow, you install. What you focus on, you expand. You don't need to defeat the mind. You only need to remind it of the direction. Every true awakening begins when you stop thinking like someone who survives and start thinking like someone who creates. The human mind is deeply ritualistic. Even when you don't realize it, it is always responding to symbols, cycles, and hidden patterns. That's why certain repeated gestures, when you wake up, before you act, at the end of the day, hold such transformative power. They are not just habits. They are vibrational commands. Psychological engineering begins when you understand that you don't need to wait for inspiration or motivation. You can build doors to access higher mental states, consciously, consistently, almost sacredly. This is what we call mental rituals. Simple practices, repeated with elevated intention, capable of reorganizing the mind's flow. Imagine the power of starting your day with deliberate silence, a sacred question, an affirmation aligned with your higher self. The mind, like an instrument, tunes itself to what you offer it in the very first notes of the day. If you offer chaos, it responds with distraction. But if you offer direction, presence, and intention, it responds with focus and clarity. Hacking the brain is not manipulation, it's redirection. It's telling the mind, here's the path. Follow this way. This symbolic engineering is what ancient traditions have always practiced, even without the modern name. Mantras, postures, silence, fire, breath. All of these are interfaces between consciousness and the mental field. And when you unite gesture with intention, the outer and the inner align. The mind needs direction, but it responds better to subtle signals than to rigid commands. That's why every ritual you create becomes a beacon. You rebuild yourself from the inside out. There is a point where doing dissolves into being, where action requires no effort, and the mind seems to glide in silence through its own clarity. That point is called the flow state, but more than just a technical term, it is a spiritual frequency. Flow arises when inner frictions cease, when you are no longer divided between who you are and who you think you should be, between what you do and what you wish you were doing. It's when the mind, body, and spirit come into sync. This state is not rare, just poorly cultivated. Most people live trapped on the surface of the mind, distracted, anxious, tense. But there is a second layer, a quieter mind, more precise, more connected to the source of action. The key to accessing it lies less in effort and more in clearing. You don't need to achieve flow. You need to remove the obstacles that block its natural emergence. Noise, interruptions, random stimuli, too many open loops. These all take up the space where flow is meant to reside. When you organize your field, physical, emotional, and mental, the mind begins to move along deeper paths. Time shifts its rhythm. Focus sustains itself without being forced. And the energy that used to scatter in excess now concentrates with direction. This state is a gift from the mind aligned with the spirit. It's the place where creation happens without tension, where intention manifests with precision. And once you access it, you won't want to return to the surface. Flow is not an exception. It is your natural inheritance, waiting for the moment you choose to stop resisting and begin simply to flow. The mind needs space to expand. And space doesn't just mean physical silence. but the absence of vibrational interference. You can be in a quiet place on the outside and still be immersed in inner noise. Accumulated thoughts, unfulfilled promises, distractions disguised as urgency. The cognitive fortress begins with a decision to protect the mental field as if it were sacred. Because it is. The mind, when free from unnecessary friction, not only thinks more clearly, it listens to the soul more deeply. And this is only possible when you create an environment that respects your frequency. Frictionless environments are not minimalist for the sake of aesthetics, but out of wisdom. And focus, contrary to what many believe, is not achieved through effort, but through the absence of internal competition. Fortress is not rigidity. It is vibrational order. It is putting each thing in its place, each energy in its time, each intention on its path. You can reconfigure your space, external and internal, to become an ally of your mental expansion. Reduce repetitive decisions. Organize time like a temple. Consciously choose what enters through your attention, because it is the doorway to your destiny. When the mind finds an environment where it can move without stumbling, it expands naturally. Not because it becomes more powerful, but because it stops fighting what keeps it from being what it already is. Focus, direction, clarity, creation. There are times when the mind, even when aligned, needs to withdraw. Not out of weakness, but out of wisdom. Just as the land needs rest between harvests, the mind needs silence between expansions. And denying this cycle is one of the deepest roots of exhaustion. Burnout is not just doing too much. It's a lack of being. It's the emptiness left by the disconnection between action and purpose. When the mind operates without being anchored in meaning, it burns out even if, on the outside, it appears efficient. But there is a higher way to move through fatigue with awareness. It's when you recognize the early signs of exhaustion and choose to stop. Strategic recovery is a spiritual practice. It is the moment when you stop producing in order to simply regenerate your presence. Silence the stimuli, close the cycles, clear the mind with rituals of release. Allow the body, the nervous system, and the emotional field to return to harmony. This rest is not unproductive. It is in the emptiness that vision is renewed, and from the pause emerges the strength that will sustain the next phase of creation. The relentless mind is not the one that never tires. It's the one that understands when it's time to withdraw, so it can move forward again with more clarity, more lightness, more truth. At the center of the quietest mind lives a command that doesn't come from force, but from presence. Self-mastery is not about controlling everything. It's about not being controlled by anything. It's when you become the lucid observer, able to guide your own mental cycles with both lightness and firmness. The relentless mind is not rigid. It is precise. It doesn't get scattered because it knows what it came here to do. This state doesn't come from harsh discipline, but from discipline that honors. It's the discipline of the sacred, of alignment with an inner order greater than external circumstances. It's when you begin to move from the frequency of your inner self and not from the demands of the external world. Self-mastery is the result of a mind that has learned to trust itself, that knows when to be silent, when to move forward, and how to sustain focus like a flame that doesn't go out. Not because there's no wind, but because it has roots. This is the end of the cycle of supposed weakness. There's no more room for inherited narratives of limitation, distraction, or constant exhaustion. When the spirit takes the helm, the mind bows in reverence and obedience to the light that created it. You were not born with a fragile mind. You were born with a vast, vibrant, and moldable mind, but you were trained to doubt it. You were programmed to believe your focus is unstable, your discipline is lacking, and your fatigue is natural. But none of that belongs to your essence. The mind, when disconnected from the spirit, loses vitality. But when it is realigned with the center, it becomes a reflection of higher consciousness. And in that state, there is no room for the illusion of weakness. Nothing outside of you is more powerful than what you cultivate in silence. True focus is not the result of force. It is the consequence of alignment. And the awakened mind does not weaken. It rises. It creates entire worlds with a single thought sustained by intention. If something within you was touched, nourished, or remembered by this content, honor that movement. Subscribe to the channel, share this video with someone who needs to awaken, and leave in the comments what moved you the most. Because when you touch the real power of your mind, you also begin to touch the spirit that has always guided you behind it all.